Hi, I'm Kate O'Hare, creator of the Pax Culturati blog at pathos.com. Journey to Bethlehem is a new live action musical version of the Nativity story, coming to theaters on November 10th from Sony's Affirm Films. Affirm is the faith based arm of Sony Pictures. Back in 2017, Affirm came out with The Star, an animated but not a full on musical version of the Nativity story. And both films do share a very funny donkey. Today I'm talking to Adam Anders, who directed the film, he co wrote it, and he co wrote the music. He worked on music for Glee and a lot of big Hollywood productions before deciding he wanted to tell the true story of Christmas. Now, that does not mean that this movie is perfectly biblical, not the least because in general, biblical characters didn't break out in choreographed dances to pop songs. So, Adam and I discussed some of the creative liberties he took with the story. Antonio Banderas plays Herod, and does he ever? But we have Joel Smallbone co starring as Herod's son. Not necessarily the one you think, not even the one I thought. Now, Joel is a member of For King and Country, an Australian Christian pop band. So he might be a new face to a lot of people. And we talked about that too. Again, Journey to Bethlehem hits theaters on November 10th. And without further ado, here's Adam. Hi, I'm Kate O'Hare from the Pax Culturati blog at pathos.com.
Ah, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, we love Pathos.
I like him too. It was funny. I went to a screening of this movie and I was literally sitting down the row from Tim Record, who directed The Star for
Oh, wow.
Affirm just a
Mhm.
few years ago. And for the record, his children seem to be really enjoying themselves. It's the first time they ever saw a movie in a theater.
Oh, fantastic. That's great to hear. That's what we made it for.
Yep.
Made it for those families, literally. It really makes me happy.
Yeah, there aren't too many musicals aside from what Disney makes
No,
that are for kids.
there aren't. And also not about things that maybe we want our kids to learn about. I think it's really important to have a movie like this that actually tells you what Christmas is about. Why do we celebrate Christmas? And there's so many Christmas movies and musicals for kids that are beautiful, vibrant, amazing movies, really colorful and fun and funny, but they're not about what actually Christmas is about. And so that was my goal: is how do I make this movie for the entire family, colorful, vibrant, my storybook Bible come to life. I like to say when I was a kid, I would flip the pages. I'd keep reading because I'm like, this is so cool. Look at these beautiful pictures and the animals and the color and the vibrance. And too many biblical movies usually are more somber, more
Mm,
downcast, and it's, staff and sandals and sheep grazing in dirt. And it's not the
yeah.
vision that I had for this was the opposite of that. Color, vibrance, fun, funny at times when it needs to be, reverent when it needs to be, but truly a movie for the entire family.
It's interesting when you walk about in the secular world at Christmas time.
Mm.
If you want to say, well, it's about the birth of Jesus, you're considered kind of a buzzkill.
Yeah,
Like, don't Jesus up my Christmas.
yeah, yeah. Well, Santa hijacked Christmas, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's Christmas, it's not Santa miss. So I would take umbrage with that. So yeah, it's definitely, it's cliche to say let's put Christ back in Christmas, but it's really
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
But this is such a disarming way to do that. And when you have a musical, music breaks down defenses and it penetrates and it unites and it crosses boundaries and things. You have a song like, Joel Smallbone's song in this movie is In My Blood. It's an amazing song. Your neighbor who's a non-believer is going to love that song. It doesn't matter, right? So it unifies and it's able to bring this story to so many people that maybe normally would react the way you just said. But good music can overcome that, So it was very important for me to make a movie for everyone, not just Christians. And a great way to accomplish that was to fill it with great music that would bring people together.
Well, as anyone knows who's done a Bible story, there are landmines aplenty.
Yes.
And I've been reading some comments from people who've been to some of the screenings. And one woman was concerned that Mary is kind of disobedient and a bit of a rebellious teen, and Joseph is kind of flirty. Even when he's betrothed, he's flirting with some. And they were a little like, oh. So what was the line you were trying to thread in trying to like put, I mean, it ends, I'm not going to say how it ends, but it ends romantically, shall we say. And that's not really what a lot of people think about when they think about Mary and Joseph, is it being like a fun romance. So what was the sort of thought process there?
Well, look, that's obviously, first of all, I'll say when you take on a story like this, I know I'm not going to make everyone happy. It's impossible. If you try to make this movie for everyone, you make it for no one.
Yeah.
So I had to follow the vision that God gave me for it and just stick to that as best I could. And honestly, I prayed every day that He would give me guidance and what to fight for, what to let go of, what was important, what was okay to play with artistically, and what wasn't. There's not that much. There's Matthew 1 and 2, Luke 1 and 2. That's what we have. We really have no information about, well, what was Mary's reaction after Gabriel visited her? How did she tell her parents? How did they react? What did Joseph think when his betrothed says, I'm pregnant with the Son of God? These are big things. And I look at that story, and it was so clear to me when I got this vision for this movie that we have the original Romeo and Juliet here. If you want to make a family movie, there's certain ingredients you need. You need a love story. Well, what greater love story than the fact that Joseph stayed with her, that he took her staying upon him, and he stayed with her through this whole thing. That's an incredible story that nobody really talks about. What a beautiful love story. And then you explore that and you try to make it relatable to people today. You know, that's what you do. You want them to engage in the story and to kind of, if they can relate to the characters, they're going to listen. They're going to open their hearts up. And, and then we have a villain, built in, Herod. What better villain can you have in a story than Herod? He was awful. And then I was thinking, well, every good movie for family needs comic relief, because if kids aren't laughing, they're not engaged. And I said, well, the wise men, it's the Three Stooges. And that's really was the basis, the framework of this movie for me. And it was so obvious. And then the colorful nature of it. And like I said, the storybook Bible come to life, that was my original vision all these years ago. And I really felt like this movie needed to be made in this way, and I knew I was going to get a target on my back for it. But I think most people will agree that taking some liberties with the story for the greater good, if you will. I mean, look, the greatest painters in history, who were all believers, right? They painted a nativity scene with the wise men there when baby's born.
Yeah.
They weren't there when the baby was born. They were allowed to take some creative license, and I felt like, well, then I can too. And I say at the beginning of the movie, this is inspired by a true story. So two things to note. One, it's not a documentary. It's inspired by, they didn't break into song and dance to pop music either. I know that.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
You never know, but it probably wasn't
Probably
pop music.
not. Yeah.
And the second thing to note is that I say true story. The filmmaker believes this is a true story. So watch it with that lens, and hopefully you can feel how much love and care went into this and how important the story is to me and to everyone who worked on this movie. And I hope that they'll see that, and they'll see what an amazing tool this can be and a blessing to so many. You can bring your neighbors, your non-believing friends. It's hard to ask them to come to church. It's not hard to ask them to go to the movies. So I hope they'll see that. And it's funny. I have an Oscar-winning director friend who's a brilliant guy, and I was kind of stressing over this, the timeline and the wise men. I'm like, can I do this? I'm going to get exactly this. I'm going to get yelled at by so many people. And he just stopped me in my tracks, and he says, Adam, nobody's going to remember your movie because the timeline is accurate. They're going to remember it because it's great. Make a great movie. And it really freed me up. And then I was just, okay, I know what I have to do now. So
there were a couple of omissions that puzzled me, because putting them in wouldn't have made much difference in the run of the story or anything else. Like when you had the Annunciation, when Gabriel appears to Mary, in the Bible, she's like, I'm the handmaid of the Lord. Mary's fiat, Mary's yes. There's really no yes. She's just left in puzzlement. And then I'm like, and
Yeah.
And
So,
and then when she went to see Elizabeth, the part where the baby leaps in Elizabeth's womb upon seeing Mary wasn't there. And I'm like, why not? So in both of those cases, like, why not? Because it wouldn't have changed the story at all. I found it kind of puzzling that those were left out because those are pretty big moments.
well, the baby does leap. Elizabeth reacts and falls on her knees, and that was intended to depict that.
Oh,
Um,
oh.
yeah, yeah. So she
Didn't
does, and
sink in with me
she yells.
apparently.
Yeah. Well, I did try. Look, all movies go through many iterations, and you have to tell the best version of the story in this framework and the time that you have. As far as Mary responding to Gabriel, I just dragged it out. Her song is that moment. And I
Okay.
needed that to be a song. So that song is this powerful moment where she's standing. I don't want to give it away too, but when she's there, she's saying, "Okay, I'm up for this. I'm going to do it." And instead of just in one moment, boom, in a musical and in a moment like this, that's too big a moment to not have a song to it. So I drag it out a little bit, and I just imagine, well, what if she just took a beat to process all this, and then it didn't happen in the moment. And look, the Bible is very vague on so many things. Like I said, we don't know what she was thinking, and I don't think they would put like blank space for 2 days while she's thinking. I mean, there's so many those little nuances that you play with. What's the best version of this? And I had to have a song. I had to have Mother to a Savior and King be that moment, and that makes that song so powerful to me. And then, of course, in the Bible, we know when Mary arrives at Elizabeth, the baby leaps, and then Mary sings. And people are like, well, why didn't you ever sing? Well, she just sang. So I kind of put those together into one big, beautiful song.
Musicals live in their own reality anyway.
They do. I mean,
They
you have
do.
to suspend belief. And, so in a musical, if I made a documentary and then they break into pop music, this is the worst filmmaker on earth.
That's
Right?
that's cop rock.
It's cop
Look
rock. Yeah, it'd be
look it
terrible.
up.
Nobody
Look it
wants to watch
up.
that movie. Yeah.
Nobody wants to watch
Um,
cop rock. Yeah.
No. So what you do is you take, you start with the, reality and the truth, and you heighten it just a little enough to justify breaking into song and dance. That's what a musical is. You have to heighten reality a little bit and suspend belief enough so when Herod starts singing, you're not like, what is he doing? Right? So that's, again, that creative license. If it's a musical and there's pop songs, it's not a documentary. And we had to take some creative license to make a good musical out of this story.
I tell you, Antonio Banderas bought in.
He did.
Bought in 100.
He
The
did.
eyeliner, he's got everything going. He
He
bought
loved it
in,
so
man.
much.
He bought in.
He did. He had so much fun. You can tell he's just having the time of his life. He loves musicals. He loves a story. He's a very has a deep faith, a very man of great faith, and you can just tell how much he loves the story, the way he threw himself into this role, and loved every minute of it. I enjoyed every minute of him on camera. I can tell you that.
One of your big roles is Herod Antipas, who's
Hmm.
just he moves away from his traditional biblical role, and it's much expanded, and he's much more a part of the plot. And you've got, I know Joe Smallbone is a singer. I don't know if he's an actor. So was it risky? Like, I don't know how well he's known to the broad American audience.
Mm.
So was that at all risky going with someone who's like not an established actor in a scene with Antonio Banderas and all these other
Mm.
people, for this film? Or was
Yeah.
it just an opportunity too good to pass on?
No, I think a couple things unpacked there. One, I went with Herod's firstborn son, Antipater, not Antipas,
Oh,
because
I'm so sorry.
yeah, because Antipas, as we know, killed John the Baptist and was not really a redeemable
Oh,
character.
right. Yeah, you're
He's even
right.
worse than his father. And what I was trying to find was a character that could be all of us looking for meaning, and the gospel story played out through one character. And historically, Antipater was his firstborn son, and Herod killed him the same year Jesus was born for trying to overthrow him.
Ah.
And Antipater tried to overthrow his father because he thought he was unfit to rule. And if you know history, Herod goes insane and he orders the massacre of the innocents and does crazy stuff.
Yeah,
So I
several
thought this,
comments I've read have made the same mistake I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
So,
So it's Antipater, and that's intentional
okay.
because Antipas is not redeemable. I don't want to give away too much, but it was important for me to have this character that has this arc that's kind of all of us. And at the end, he, I don't want to give away the ending, but it all works out. But he's a really central role in this movie. And as far as Joel playing him, I did want a Christian to play that role in particular. Not necessarily every role, but that one is important because he's kind of, like I said, so central to the story of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I said the same thing. Like I'd got Herod, Antonio Banderas, and now I'm like, now I got to quickly cast his son. Like, and we were
Poor
already shooting.
Joel. I
We were already
mean,
shooting.
I got
Yeah,
to
but
do a scene with Antonio
I know.
Banderas.
So his wife was already in the movie. She was Deborah, who plays Mary's sister.
Mhm.
And somebody on set suggested Joel, and I go, well, I can't have Joel Smalley. He's Australian. Like, what? He's not an actor. I said exactly what you said. That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. But then somebody, no, I think he's acting. I'm like, really? So that weekend, I started seeing, well, what has he acted in? And he'd been in several movies as a lead role. And I go, wow, okay. So I
There
watched
you
one.
go.
I go, wow, he's really a good dramatic actor, and he has no accent. This could work. So I asked Mariah for permission. Can I talk to Joel about this role? So I called Joel. He picks up FaceTime, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm packing. I'm like, what are you packing for? He's like, I'm coming to Spain to visit my wife. And I said, bring a bigger suitcase. How would you like to have Antonio Banderas as your scene partner for the whole movie? And it really just worked out beautifully, and he's amazing in the movie. I think they have such a great thing. There's such a great juxtaposition to each other. It really makes it super interesting.
We can continue the great affirmed tradition of a funny donkey
Why not? You know
in a
what?
Christmas musical.
He should be number one on the call sheet. They
There you
wouldn't let.
go.
He's everybody's favorite character. He's amazing. I very much. I don't know if you remember Fiddler on the Roof, a very one
Hmm.
of my favorite musicals of all time, and the horse in that movie always moved me. How he was the best friend of Tevye, and I thought, well, maybe Fig is Mary's protector and her best friend, and she's not so sure about this Joseph character. So it takes a while for him to warm up to Joseph, but we had a lot of fun with Panda, who plays Fig the donkey in the movie. I think he'll be a favorite of all kids.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You, great questions. Great talking to you.
My pleasure. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
All right.
Never,
Bye-bye.
never too early to say Merry Christmas.